Hi friend, Editing TK coming in here really quick. Just wanting to give you a little bit of a trigger warning. We do discuss the topic of sexual assault in this episode. Nothing graphic, nothing in too much detail. But if you need to skip this episode, we have 148 other ones that you can enjoy. If this topic is too much for you, that's totally fine. And we'll see you next week for our season finale. Okay, enjoy the episode if you're gonna listen. Bye! Welcome, friend. I'm TK, your tour guide to the past, and you are listening to For the Love of History, the podcast where we talk about world history, women's history, and weird history. With the exception of Zeus the goose, Medusa may be one of the most well-known figures in Greek mythology, and she is certainly the most misunderstood. Today, dear one, we are getting justice for Medusa and setting the record straight on the snake-haired Gorgon. But first, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. If you would like to support the podcast, you can head on over to Patreon. Patreon is a fantastic way to help For the Love of History grow and get better and stay on air. Subscribing to the YouTube channel is also a great free 99 way to help support the podcast, and leaving a rating and review is also extremely super mega helpful. So if you can do one or all of those things, that would be greatly appreciated. And that'll about do it for the housekeeping. It's a short one today because I am rearing to go to get into this topic. I have been wanting to cover Medusa for a long time, so it is time to put on our Sherlock Holmes hats, jump into the time machine, turn the dial to ancient Greece, grab a little snickety snack, get sunk into whatever craft or the dishes if you're doing those, and let's get to it. Who is Medusa? Yes, we know that she is the snake-haired lady that will turn you to stone, but who was she before her head was stolen from her? This is not an easy question to answer because there are so many variations of the Medusa story. She's what's known as a Gorgon, which appears in the Iliad and is described as having glaring eyes. Not eyes that can turn people to stone, just glaring eyes. The Gorgons are monstrous women from the underworld with big giant wings, round faces, long tongues, flat noses, and snakes for hair. But in the Iliad, the Gorgon is not named Medusa, so it doesn't have a name at all, so it's technically not the first mention of Medusa. That literary badge of honor goes to Hesiod in his long-ass poem called Theogony, which was written between 730 or 700 BCE. And funnily enough, he never mentions any snake hair, and in this version, Medusa is born a Gorgon with two sisters, Uriel and Stheno. Their mommy is Ceto, a primordial sea goddess, and their daddy is Phorcys, the ancient sea god of the hidden dangers of the depth. And although her parents are both immortal, Medusa was unfortunately born mortal. In Theogony, Hesiod writes, "The Gorgons who dwell beyond glorious ocean in the frontier lands towards night, where are the clear-voiced Hesperides, Stheno and Uriel, and Medusa, who suffered a woeful fate. She was mortal, but the two were undying and grew not old." So her sisters were immortal, but she wasn't. Sometimes genetics are just a little bit weird and sometimes unfair, like the fact that my mom passed down the tall gene to my brother, but not to me. Here I am, standing 5'2", looking like an extra in The Hobbit, which is great. I love The Hobbit, but I would love a few extra inches. But I digress. From the very beginning, though she is important, Medusa is a Gorgon and never a woman. Hesiod was not very expressive or detailed in his story of Medusa. He only writes a few lines about her where her head is still attached to her body. We wouldn't have a detailed story about Medusa for another several hundred years. The most retold version of the Medusa story was written by a Roman dude with some very strong opinions towards authority. Ovid is an extremely divisive figure in literature. Some people believe that he's a misogynist asshat that just wrote about sexual assault all the time, while others believe he was a revolutionary who was pointing out the misogyny and sexism and blatant disregard for women in Roman society. We just don't know. We cannot go back and ask him what his intentions were, so I will hold off on the castor oil of judgment until we can travel back and assess him properly. In Ovid's Metamorphosis poem, the story of Medusa is elaborated on and turns very dark very quickly. In Hesiod's version of Medusa, Poseidon and Medusa lay together in a meadow. But Ovid wrote, "They say that Neptune, lord of the seas, aka Poseidon, violated her in the temple of Minerva, aka Athena. Jupiter's daughter turned away and hid her chaste eyes behind her aegis, so that it might not go unpunished. She changed the Gorgon's hair to foul snakes." My controversial yet brave opinion is that Athena is not a girl's girl, okay? That is the hill that I am willing to die on. None of the gods or goddesses are particularly kind to humans with the exception of Hestia, but she's an exception. Virtually every myth where Athena interacts with a woman, she always either punishes the woman or sides with a man. And now, not to, get on Athena's case too much, other goddesses do that as well, so it's not just her. But here's a particularly egregious example in the Oresteia, which is a trilogy of Greek tragedies. In it, Athena says, "Mine is the right to add the final note, and I award it to Orestes' cause. For me no mother bore within her womb, and save for wedlock evermore eschewed. I vouch myself the champion of the man, not of the woman. Yea, with all my soul, in heart, as birth a father's child alone. Thus will I not too heinously regard a woman's death who did her husband slay." Basically, this means that Athena thinks that no woman has a claim to her children, okay? Only the man has claim to the children. And that's just one of the many examples of Athena just not being a girl's girl. And I could go on, but I will not, because this is about Medusa. So in Ovid's version of Medusa, she is a beautiful temple maiden in Athena's temple. And all shrine maidens of Athena must be chaste. They must be virginal, okay? The problem is Medusa was very, very beautiful. She had gorgeous black hair that attracted men like flies to honey. But being an obedient and diligent temple maiden, Medusa said, "No thank you, I'm good, get away from me." And she declined all advances. But there was one disgusting fishman that she was unable to dissuade. And that is Poseidon, or Neptune if you're Roman. If you're me, I call him the king of fish pea soup, which is the ocean. As we heard earlier, he does not understand the concept of consent and pulls a Zeus, who is most definitely on the castor oil list, and takes advantage of Medusa. And to add insult to injury, okay, the god of fish pea does it in Athena's temple. Athena is incredibly upset at the insult and swiftly punishes Medusa. Athena punishes her by turning her beautiful hair into snakes and making her a gruesome, disgusting Gorgon. with the ability to turn both man and beast alike into stone with just one look. Medusa is banished to an island with her sisters, where she thought she would live out the rest of her days until some little rapscallion named Perseus came to take her head. This is yet another big difference between Ovid and Hesiod's version of Medusa. Hesiod just says Perseus goes and he cuts her head off and that's that. But Ovid describes that other quote-unquote heroes come to the island in an attempt to slay Medusa, and these heroes are changed from their natures to hard stone by Medusa's gaze. But there is one quote-unquote hero that is different from the rest, and he is the one that is finally able to slay Medusa, and his name is Perseus. Ovid assembles basically the Greek god version of the Avengers to help out Perseus by giving him a helmet of invisibility, a sword, a shiny shield to look in so that he can look into the shield and not Medusa, and a magic pouch. And to top it all off, he gets a pair of winged sandals from Hermes so that he can just fly everywhere. How thoughtful and considerate and kind of the gods to do that. So nice. So Percy Pants, he heads on over to the island, armed and super overpowered. He finds Medusa sleeping, and while she is asleep, he cuts off her head and stuffs it in a magic bag. When her head is taken from her, her children, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, the sometimes giant, sometimes winged boar, spring forth from her neck. Medusa's body is left on the island, and her sisters mourn her death with shrieks and sobs so gut-wrenching that Athena decides to make a flute in order to imitate the wailing of the distraught Gorgon sisters. What? Okay. All right. No comment. No comment on that one. Just thinking lots of thoughts about that. Anyways, the story of Medusa does not end when her life does. Nay, dear one. Poor thing can't get any rest. Truly, her story begins after her death, as Percy Pants, the most unheroic of heroes, takes her head back as a prize to prove to Daddy Zeus the Goose that he's worthy. As he flies over Libya, drops of Medusa's blood fall to the earth and form thousands of snakes. More drops fall into the sea and create red coral. And during his travels, he also discovers that Medusa's head can be used as a weapon, and he turns a sea monster and some other foes into stone. He also rescues a fair maiden and all that typical blah 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 stuff. It's safe to say that he would not have been able to return safely home if it was not for this poor Gorgon's head. And you would think, or you would at least hope, I hoped, when I heard this story for the first time, that Medusa could have some friggin' peace after Percy Pants gets back home, but no, that's just asking too much. Because Athena, my delicious donut, puts Medusa's head on her shield and uses it in battle for the rest of forever. Goodness gracious, there's a lot to unpack here. The story of Medusa, particularly Ovid's version, has been told and retold and remade and told some more. It's several books, several movies, several video games. It's even a Funko Pop now, or not the story, but Medusa herself is a Funko Pop. And her son is a Bratz doll. Anyways, Medusa has permeated pop culture for centuries, and so many different morals and meanings can be extrapolated from the various versions. Some see society's hatred for women. Others believe it highlights that even in death, powerful women can never be safe. In Ovid's version, Medusa is not a danger to anyone other than those stupid enough to seek her out on her island. She's not a monster on the loose or a blood-hungry creature. Percy Pants kills more people in the story with Medusa's head than Medusa ever did. Her body count, 0. Perseus, I think he kills like 5 people, okay? Medusa kills 0 people. And this could allude to the fact that when women wield power, it's bad. But when men do the exact same thing, it's heroic. She has also become the face of many feminist movements, and the Medusa head has become a very popular tattoo motif to symbolize these ideas of empowerment and strength. And many victims of sexual assault use the image as a way to indicate that they are survivors. There are many beautiful interpretations of this story, but not all analyses are, shall we say, logical and coherent, let alone beautiful. And this is where I bring up Freud. And Freud is like WTF personified. Freud is like if the emotions of confusion and disgust were a person. And if you don't know who Freud is, he came up with a lot of weird ideas about psychology. Some people call him the grandfather of psychology or the father of psychology. I disagree and think he is very gross. There are many reasons why I intensely despise Freud, but the reason that is relevant for us today is what he gleaned from the Medusa story, which, hold on to your flabbers, dear one, because they are about to be gasted, okay? Freud thought that the story of Medusa represented a fear of castration. Excuse me, what? What? A fear of castration? I have no words. Just kidding, I have many words. I need to pause for some Freud hate really quick, so excuse me while I rant. So this farce of a human being is disgusting in so many ways. Number 1, he thought menstruation was connected to the nose, so if one of his patients was having menstrual problems, he recommended a nasal surgery. He also praised Nazi German ideals until they were like, hey, Jewish man, you need to get out of Germany. And then he was like, oh, no, I'm gonna flee to the United States. He is also a misogynistic garbage human who used pseudoscientific methods to say that women were morally and intellectually inferior. And he was super weird about sex. He had the most weird sex things, and I don't give one sweet, sweaty Sobek if he advanced, air quotes, psychology, or he opened doors, or he's considered the grandfather of psychology. I don't care. He was a misogynist, fascist, deeply weird human being whom I loathe. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Back to what he thought about Medusa. So this absolute thimble-headed pickle of a human being, Freud, said that her head being cut off symbolized the fear of castration, and Medusa's ability to turn things into stone was an allegory for arousal and being stiff from arousal. And I want to bleach my mouth right now for saying these words, okay? And then he's not done, okay? He also weaved in to his weird little theory that the snake hair on Medusa's head was a metaphor for the fear of your mom's hoo-ha. What the? How? Why? I'm so confused. What? I need to take a break. I cannot deal with Freud. But he's not the only man who took offense to this story. Aristotle, if you're new here, also decided that the story showed man's fear for the female gaze, and it was just one more reason why men were better than women, according to Aristotle. I loathe them both entirely, but I refuse to end this episode on those two fleshy sacks of spare parts. The stories of empowerment far outweigh the stories of the PP. In 2007, when the Me Too movement was started by sexual assault survivor and activist Tarana Burke, Medusa quickly became the unofficial mascot for the movement. And just a year later, Luciano Garbani created a statue of Medusa holding the severed head of Percy Pants. And that was placed in front of the Manhattan courthouse that often hears cases of sexual assault. And boy howdy, were people pissed. They were so mad. It was outrageous to have a woman. She is naked, but who cares? Because how many Greek and Roman statues are out there with naked people that are considered classic art, okay? And, okay, there is a statue from a few hundred years ago created by Benvenuto Cellini, and this statue is Perseus standing astride Medusa's dead, naked body while holding her severed head aloft. And that is fine art. But our dude bro Luciano, his sculpture, offensive and disgusting. Sure thing. I get it. I see. When another artist pulls a Missy Elliott, puts it down, flips it, and reverses it, it's a scandal. When it's a woman, it's a scandal. Okay. I'm getting hot in here. I can't have the air conditioner on because then the microphone will pick up the noises. I am heated, literally. We know how this goes. We are not new to this world, and we understand the misogyny and sexism that there is in so many facets of life. And there is no wrong way to interpret the story of Medusa unless you're Freud or asshat Stottle. You can feel empowered by it. You can feel for Medusa. You can glean from it whatever feels right to you. That's the beautiful thing about mythology. It's meant to make you think and make you feel. Medusa, for me, is a survivor. Her image has been transformed from monstrous figure into a symbol of empowerment. She shows us that even in the darkest stories, there's a chance of reclaiming power. And when we look at Medusa today, we see someone who was punished for something that wasn't her fault, but who now stands as a beacon for those who refuse to be victimized by society's gaze. So here's my take. Medusa deserves to be an honorary member of the Delicious Donuts History BFF Club. She is fierce, she is complex, and she is unapologetically herself. And I hope that you feel the same. And that today we brought a little bit more justice to the story of Medusa. Well, dear one, we have come to our final thought, and there are so many facets of the Medusa story that I wanted to talk about. The whole books have been written about her, so I cannot fit in everything in 30 minutes or however long this episode ends up being. But I did want to tell you about one cool aspect of Medusa art. So in most Greek and Roman art, people are depicted almost always in profile, but Medusa is almost always depicted full face, like front face, two eyes, everything, situation going on. So her image is really different and really noticeable, and it's really cool. And her image, this front-facing image, was a symbol of protection. It was put on a lot of temples, a lot of amulets, a lot of different places as kind of almost the same thing, the same concept as an evil eye. You know how the evil eye is the evil thing that like wards off stuff. So the Medusa's face or the Gorgon's face is the thing that wards off evil. And I thought that was really cool. So I hope you enjoyed that. Well, dear one, that is episode 149 in the books. our second to last episode of this season. We have one more episode to go, which I am both sad and excited about. I'm sad about it because I won't see you for a while, but I'm excited because I get to work on new topics, which there will be some topic polls coming on Instagram in the coming weeks. So don't forget to go over, check on Instagram in the stories so you can have your voice heard. And with that, I'm gonna tell you, get this frog out of my throat. I'm gonna tell you to do something kind for yourself. Whatever project you were working on while you were doing this, it looks beautiful. You did an amazing job. I'm very proud of you. If you're on your way to work, hey, have a good day. If you're on your way from work, I hope you had a good day. Take care of yourself. Go touch some grass. Drink some water. I'm gonna do that right now. And I will see you next week for our season finale, where we're gonna talk about Lilith. We started the season with the devil, we're ending the season with Lilith. I feel like that's the perfect little caps to the season. And that's it. Okay. Take care of yourself. I love you so much. Talk to you later. Bye. La 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 la. La la la. How do I say this? How do I say this word?
Chrysaor.
Chrysaor? Not how I would have thought that would be said.
Chrysaor.
Chrysaor. Okay. Press this button, automatic feeder. And the cats are fed. And the cats are fed. Oh my god. I put a flavored water packet in there, and there was a lot around the rim. Do I look like the face from the Wizard of Oz? Quotes from the Wizard of Oz. This is perfect. Come back. That has to be copyright written. Okay, are we ready? Stop it. I love this lighting. I feel so spooky. As for you, my galvanized friend, you want a heart, but don't know how lucky you are to not have one. Hearts will never be practical until they can be made unbreakable. I disagree with you, wizard. I disagree. What else does the wizard has to say? I've got the Dora the Explorer song stuck in my head. Dora the Explorer. Boots and super cool exploradora. Why, anybody can have a brain. That's a very mediocre commodity. I think that's enough quoting the Wizard of Oz, right?